Hey guys, welcome to another video. Today, it's a big day because today I actually get a pleasure of talking to Kayla Cross, who is our great Canadian player. She's 17 and she is a holder of numerous Canadian titles, including nationals, of course. And probably like the biggest, and Kayla, correct me if I'm wrong here, but to me, the biggest achievement so far in the junior career is the finals of Grand Slams, both, Australian Open and Wimbledon. That's pretty big. Not a lot of people can say that. Not a lot of people can hold that silverware. So yeah, welcome to the show, Kayla. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So listen, I remember you since you probably were 10, I believe, at a time when you were at a provincial tryouts, and I just started working for Tennis Canada, and we see all the kids, we see them play. It's more than 100 kids, and then we go like to a room to discuss like who can we invite, who do we see like as the promising talent. And I remember all of the coaches, like they were saying Kayla Cross, yeah, she's in 100%. Like some kids we would discuss like, okay, maybe I don't know, Kayla Cross, okay, like in like. Everybody loved you, right away, because you were such a great athlete at a very young age. Like at 10, you were probably like the best athlete there. So I just want to ask you, and we'll talk about it more later in the show, but I want to ask you, how did you get started in tennis? And like what other sports did you play before you were 10, before you were such a great athlete at 10 already?
I got into tennis because my dad and two brothers played. So my dad went to Georgia for university, so he had a tennis background, so he put his kids in tennis. And then obviously as the youngest sibling, I just wanted to copy my brothers, especially Ashton, because he was doing so well. So I was like, I want to be better than him and all that. So that's kind of how that started.
I know the competition between you two guys really good.
Yeah. And I played I did competitive skiing for like a couple years, probably till I was like 10. And then I did soccer, competitive soccer, all the way till COVID happened.
Wow. So what did you do before 10? Like where did you play? Where was your home club before 10?
I was in London, Ontario. So kind of I didn't really have like a main coach. I kind of just followed Ashton. That's how it went. But the two main places were like Green Hills and the Hunt Club. So like Adam Baranowski and then Anthony Glavanek were the two kind of in charge of both of those clubs.
Okay, so if you remember, I know you were pretty young at that time, but if you remember, what were the things that you got out of working with them the most? Like what made a difference? Like what stuck?
I think like always enjoying myself when I was out there. Like I always wanted to be on court. I don't remember doing this, but they'd always tell me like when the time was over, because I'd hit like let's say 4 to 6 after school, that I would like not want to leave the court and I would like start crying if I left the court.
That's so
So
cool.
I think just like enjoying it and just like work ethic. Like I saw how hard Ashton was working, how hard some of the other kids were working, Josh was working. There was a good group of us, and obviously I was the youngest, but I'd always want to be very competitive with them. So I
Yeah.
think just working really hard and wanting to be out there were the two main takeaways.
Yeah, 100%. And it's hard to combine those two, right? Because hard work and fun for like a 9-year-old, like it's kind of hard to combine. So in your opinion, what do you think were the things that got you to love hard work? Is it because of the environment that you were in, perhaps?
Yeah, I think the environment was very good. All of us wanted the same goal. We all wanted to be pros. I mean, when you're saying that when you're 8, it's like one thing, but we honestly all really wanted it very badly. And coming from London, it's not the biggest tennis place. You don't really see that many stars coming out of it. But we just wanted to work our way. I mean, for me, Ashton and Josh was to get to Toronto. And then once we were in Toronto, we wanted to play nationals, and we kind of were building off of that. But I think it gave us a lot of fire knowing that like we came from such a small place and we wanted to make a name for ourselves. But I mean, like a lot of it's just like the environment. Like the coaches would like make the drills fun, but in a way of like you still need to work. Like if you want to do like 10 in a row, try to beat your brother at doing 10 in a row, try to beat the next person. So like you're still working hard, but at the same time, it's like in like a competitive setting kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%. No, the environment is huge. I'm glad you have the same opinion. That's what kind of influenced you. When you were growing up, did you have a favorite tennis player? Did you like, were you looking up to somebody?
It was Federer and Ash Barty, but now they're both retired, so I
So
don't
who,
really have anyone else to say.
but
But it
hey,
was,
but now you're old enough to understand that, like you are the star within you, and you are the ones who is gonna, inspire yourself. So that's kind of cool. So okay, so like you're Tennis Canada, right there from the very start of your career, if you can say, like at 10. What again, like what was the biggest thing from 10 to 17, okay, that made it work for you, like that made you achieve so many great things?
I'd say, I mean, Tennis Canada was like an instrumental part of it. The funding you get, the resources, everything. I think the biggest probably thing for me was leaving like regular school, going to a
Mm-hmm.
sports school, because then it gave me the opportunity to play more tennis and play more hours. Even between like 10 and 14, I still like I was in Tennis Canada, but I still wasn't playing like that many hours. I'd say like 2-3 hours maybe a day.
Yeah.
Um, but it was very hard with school when you're doing school full time and you have tennis, like going in person school, it's a lot. And when I switched, like when I moved to Toronto at 11 or 12, I think, I did like a sports school. So like they
Mm-hmm.
understand more, you get to travel more, you can be gone. I think that was like really good for me because I got to, spend time in doing something I really love
Mm-hmm.
and not always having to like miss it sometimes because of like whatever came up in life. But, just like having those extra hours to really work hard and take my game to the next level, I started traveling a lot more, doing international tournaments, getting exposure to that. I think that was like a big part of it was just, getting out of my comfort zone.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
And can you tell me, and just to everybody else as well, at what age, again, you were part of a sports school? At 12, you were
uh,
saying, when you moved
12.
to. So what does that mean for the schedule wise? Like what was your schedule like, both like in school and on the court, if you
So
remember?
I would go to school at 8:30 or 9 until 12,
Hmm.
and that was grade 6, 7, 8, till 12. And then after that, I was at tennis. I would do 2 mornings. I would do like 6:30 to 8 in the morning, so very early mornings, but I would
Yeah.
do those. And then I would go to Tennis Canada and hit from, I think it was like 1:30 to 4 or something like that. I think we did like 2.5 hours, something
Yeah.
around that. And then we'd
1:30
have,
to 4:30, because we usually would
yeah,
have like 2 hours on court, 1 hour fitness, or
yeah,
the other way around. Yeah.
yeah. So we would do like that, and that was kind of my schedule. And then Saturdays, like you would do like just one hit in the morning and then a light fitness, and then you're off Sunday.
Hmm.
Um, and then when I switched to high school for grade 9, I went to Bill Crothers. So like
Yeah.
we had that program where we went to school for like an hour.
Yeah, I know. It's like, what is that?
Yeah, we show up for one class and then the rest we do online.
Yeah.
So it gives us more flexibility. So we would go to the courts, we'd hit like 10:30 to noon, then lunch, and then we'd hit again like 1:30 to 3:30, then fitness. So I got to have like more hours on court, and then COVID hit. So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
do
Fun times. Fun times
yeah.
for tennis, for any
And then
sport,
after
everything.
that, I moved to Montreal. So we stay at the center from around 8:30 in the morning until 6 p.m. So we're there long hours, but
Yeah.
you get school done, you hit 4 hours, you do fitness for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Uh, so everything's like set there.
Yeah. No, that's a huge benefit for sure. So tell me a little bit more about the education part of things, because, like, again, it's going to be important for many parents, because it's a big commitment, right? Like for any parent to say, okay, you know what, I'm gonna put my child in a sports school because tennis is a priority. And I always like told parents, like, listen, you at some point you have to make a big call if tennis is gonna be a priority. So in your case, obviously it is. So it lays a lot of responsibility on you as an athlete to, like you were saying, you were in school for 1 hour and then the rest of it was on like online education. So you basically were responsible for your own education. Okay, so
Yeah.
can you talk a little bit about how did you manage to pass all of the classes? You know, no, like no, but not just like from you're like only 13, 14 trying to do all the online classes, but more from like your busy schedule. Because when you're on tour, it's really busy days. When you're like training, it's a lot of training hours and you're dead tired at the end of the day. So like, can you talk a little bit about that? Because not a lot of people are
Yeah.
actually know about this.
Yeah, it's very hard for sure. It's very demanding. Having to juggle both. Like in a normal setting, when you have due dates set for you, it's hard enough. But when you're online and all you have is like a year-end date, so like it's very hard to like be like, okay, I need to get this done because you're all like, oh, like it's due in a year. But like there's a lot of stuff, so you can't leave it to the
Yeah,
last minute.
yeah,
Um, I think the biggest thing is just like planning out your days. Like in Montreal, it's kind of set for us because we have everything like lined up. But when we were in Toronto, it was just like, here's your tennis schedule, but we had to figure out like the rest of the schedule. So, it's like starting to do your classes right away, starting to get work done right away. Because if you do like an hour every day, it's better than waiting till the last minute and like having to miss a tournament or having to skip practice because like your course is due or whatever it is. So like it's better to do like it in small increments and get it done consistently than to leave it to the last minute because then that's when you have to change your plans because of it. And I never wanted my school to interfere with my tennis, and
yeah.
so far it hasn't. Like haven't had to skip any tournaments because of it. So but it does take a lot of time management. It takes a lot of adjusting. I think at the beginning I struggled a lot. But as you go on, you find your rhythm. Um, you just have to, it's easier if you like go before you start like working on the class, like you set a schedule. Like I want unit 1 done by this date, by
That's
this
right.
date. You try to set your own due dates.
Mm-hmm.
And what worked also well for me is like I would plan out my like year. Let's say I had like my schedule for 3 months. If I was like training versus competing, I would do more work on the training days because when I'm
Mm-hmm.
competing, you never know. There's rain delays, there's all this. So
That's right.
some
That's
days
right.
like you can't do anything. You just don't have time to do it. So, trying to make your workload a little less when you're traveling and more when you're at home because you can schedule around it a little bit more. You have more time. It's a set schedule where when you're at tournaments, there's no set schedule. Even though it says you're playing at noon, there's a good chance you're playing at
No,
like 5 p.m.
100, no, like the competing days, it's like forget about it for sure. It's
Yeah.
like it's long days, and then sometimes you're at a hotel like at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and like last thing
Yeah.
you want to do is open like
Yeah.
like your
So it's just
workbook.
yeah,
So for
it's
sure.
just like scheduling. But yeah, the one thing I think that worked well for me last year, we traveled for 19 weeks straight. So I obviously had to do work when I was gone. But
Yeah.
even then, like I would take my training week and be like, we'd all be like sitting in the lobby. We do school, we do it
Mhm.
consistently. And then when we're competing, we try to like just focus on our tennis. Like, of course, like randomly we read a book or do whatever, but you don't want to be fixated on doing your school when you're competing because it's a lot. Like it's very hard. So
Mm.
trying to like manage your time that way.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's huge. And what I'm hearing from you also saying, like you didn't say it directly, but something I can pick up from it is that it teaches you responsibility, it teaches you accountability, it teaches you time management, it teaches you just being more mature in general. Because if you're not like on top of your things, you're going to have problems, you're not going to be able to travel, and then like the whole thing kind of like it's like a snow.
Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a big chunk of work that you guys have to do and do well in order for you to be on court. So that's something like we as coaches, we are aware about it. But now obviously we know that the process, but like having you talked about it, it's like makes us respect you more, because
Yeah.
like because it's a lot of work, because we only, like, honestly, yes, we care about, we always set certain time frames for work, like we allocate certain time for you guys to work, but we really, like, drill you for when you're on the court.
Yeah.
Like whatever happens at school, we just, like, it's like, okay, so
Yeah.
for you guys to stay on top of the things, like, really, honestly, like, good job.
Thank
Okay. So, again, like, from your story, from what I know of you, like from 10 to 14, that's where I worked
you.
for, like, for Tennis Canada. That's where I know about you more. You had a lot of coaches working with you. Okay. So, which is something unusual, because usually you would have like a one, like, coach, like with the player, but with you, you worked with many coaches in Toronto. You worked with many coaches in Montreal. You work with Natalie Tauziat, who's in France, but she's working with Tennis Canada as well. With Simon, like you had your childhood, Simon Bartram, of course, from
Yeah.
Toronto on. And so can you tell a little bit more, how did that work out for you? Because it's hard, right? Like,
Yeah.
you heard a lot of things going your way, like in terms of like information. How do you dissect that?
Yeah, I think it was a big adjustment. I mean, it was a big adjustment, but not at the same time, because I guess like growing up, I never had like a main coach. It was always just like wherever Ashton was, I was. So like
Yeah.
kind of just like went with that. And then when I moved to Toronto, was like my first like main coach like was Simon Bartram, because like I'd always like report back to him. Like I might be at TC 4 days, but like those 2 days with Simon, I knew who I was gonna be with. I knew what we were gonna work on. It was kind of like my like anchor, I guess. So that's like I think what got me through those like 4 years before I moved to Montreal was like having that anchor. Like if you said something or if Andre said something, I always would like go back to Simon and be like, okay, like I don't really understand this, and like not that what you guys were saying was
Of
wrong, but
course.
like make it make sense for me. Because like Tennis Canada, like every year we had a new set of coaches, or like a couple coaches that were coming in and out, like Alan, Andre, like you, like there was always someone like new in the mix. So like I think he kind of made it make sense in my little brain at the
Yeah,
time
no,
because
for sure,
he
for sure.
understands so much. But I also like there's good and bads to it. Of course, there's a lot of information flowing around. But I think all of my coaches have always worked well together. They've always communicated, so it made it a little easier on me. And also like the good to having a lot of coaches is you get a lot of different input, like you're not hearing the same thing all the time. Like maybe you say something and Simon says something, but the way you say it, I understand it better. So like I think that also helped. And just hearing like multiple opinions, like, and you don't have to take everything from
That's
every
right.
single, it's just like too much. So taking like what worked for me from like everyone, like there's not one coach that I haven't met, whether like we've parted ways now or like are still working together. Like I've always learned something from everyone, and that's something I've always like kept in my mind of like no matter like how much you don't like the person or like the person, like there's always something you can learn from that, whether that's a coach, whether that's like another kid, like there's always something to learn. So I think like that part I liked about having a lot of coaches, but it was important to have like that anchor of like Simon to be there
Yeah.
for me and explain things. Like even when I moved to Montreal, every week we'd have like a conference with the other coaches, because like I didn't like I was like thrown in and moving provinces, like didn't really know what was going on, and like that was like my support. I was like, okay, wait, if I just talk to Simon, like it'll all be good. So you
Yeah.
need like that anchor, but it's also nice to have like input from everyone.
100%. So listen, you brought out something really important, I think, is that you can learn from everybody. And that's a really open-minded mindset. It's really mature mindset. So my question is, who taught you that? That's really, because I mean, honestly, that's like, to me, that's the biggest like thing that anybody can pass to like a young athlete, like to be open-minded, especially in our sport, where like you go through a lot of like professionals in your career. That's just the nature of any sport. And just to be open-minded to learn, like this is huge. So do you remember like who did you get it from? Like not necessarily, maybe it was your parents, maybe it was Ashton.
Not Ashton,
Not
thank
Ashton. Not Ashton for
um,
sure.
But I think it was Simon. I think
Mm.
I've heard it from everyone, but when it was, I think, when maybe Alan and Ruben were like the new coaches at Tennis Canada, and I was like, oh my gosh, like another new set of coaches. Like I've been through so many, and like Natalie was in the mix, and like she was from France, so I wasn't talking to her that much, but she'd randomly come, and I just had a lot of people going around, and I was testing out Montreal at the same time, so it was just like so many voices. And I remember, like, I forget which coach it was, but I had like an argument with them. And then I went back to Simon. He's like, Kayla, like you can learn you can learn something from everyone. Just like go in it. If you don't think it works, then just disregard it. Like whatever, use like everything. There's always something you can learn. And I was like, no, like that's not true. That's not true. And then I went back the next day to practice. And I was like, okay, maybe that was like kind of smart, like I guess. And I think over time that like cockiness to like no, like I don't want to listen to you, like went away. And just like as you mature, I mean now like no matter what, like there's I can learn something from everyone. Like
Yeah.
it might be something small, it might be something big. Some people you learn a lot more from than others, but there's always something. Like it could be like a 5-year-old, like just looking at them like doing something, like it's like, oh wait, that was kind of funny, or that was cool. Like I can learn something from that.
Yeah.
And I think also traveling helps a lot with that, seeing different cultures, seeing what people deal with. And just like, I mean, the girl I played at like the finals of Wimbledon in doubles, like her story growing up was way different than mine. But it's like struggle, like everyone has their own like struggles and stuff like that.
That's
But
right.
like everyone has like different struggles, which is like cool to find out, and you just learn something from everyone. But I think Simon was the one that kind of like nudged me. Like everyone was saying it, but then like when he said it, I was like,
Yeah. And
okay, like
and he was the voice you trusted, really, right? Like from the very young age. So that was important that he said that. So it's kind of like,
yeah,
okay, I guess, that's the way it
like,
is.
I guess
I
yeah.
guess you should be learning from somebody else. Okay. So from everybody, I mean.
Yeah.
So, like it's what I wanted to ask you is, again, because you went through so many coaches and it's very unique to your story, what made it about a coach that what was it about a coach that made you kind of like, okay, I can, like it's just you click with that coach? Like what was it for you that's like, okay, that's pretty cool, like I like this guy, I like this girl, I like, like what was it about a coach that made you like in your mind it's like, that's pretty cool, I want to learn from that person?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me was like them coaching me, but also giving me the chance to like figure it out sometimes on my own. Like a lot of coaches always like as soon as you miss the shot, they want to like say something to you right away, right away, right away. And I've always grown up like I'm the youngest child, so like more independent, kind of want to do my own thing. And so like to me, like I was very creative in the aspect of like I wanted to figure out on my own sometimes. Like of course I want help, but like if I can't get it on the first one, like give me the chance to do it a couple times to understand like after. And also like a big thing for me was like them understanding me, what I've been through, what I like kind of how I respond to things, because everyone's going to respond to things based off like past things that have happened and whatever else. So, like understanding me as like a person and treating me as a person more than just a tennis player, like not only caring about like the tennis player in me, like caring about what's happening off court, like how I'm reacting to stuff, like that helps me on court. A lot of stuff, like a lot of tennis players, as you get older, when you're little, it's more like a hobby and like you're just going to tennis, whatever. But like when you get older, it becomes your job. So like you don't want to always having to bring stuff that's happening off court on court, but you also need an outlet to like let it out and
Sure.
like do things. So like having a coach like care about the person in you is very important before just the tennis player. And I think those coaches were the ones I really clicked with. First one ever being like Simon was like the main anchor to me. He'd always care about how I was doing. If I was stressed about something, he'd be like, if it was like school, let's say, he'd be like, don't come to practice today because it's going to go bad anyway. And like I would do my school and I'd come back to practice and I'd be so happy to be there. Like you want to come to practice like with the right attitude of like I want to be here. If you don't want to be there, it's not going to be productive. So it's like having a coach that understands that, because you're not going to be in the best mood every day of your life.
Oh, for sure. Listen, for sure. But also, like it's like, since you brought it up, I think it's important also, yes, like learn yourself enough to understand, okay, this is like, I just need like one day off.
Yeah.
But also, like, you're gonna have situations where you have to just push through,
Yeah, you
right?
have to
Like,
push through. Yeah.
so
So it's
so
like
it's
finding the balance of it.
that's right. Like, just learn enough about yourself to understand which days you just have to push through, just suck it up and go through it.
Yeah.
And learn the days it's like, no, like I just really
Yeah.
need like it.
Like
And
there's
that,
days where like Simon would look at me and he was like, let's go, like finish practice, do this, whatever. And then there's days where he's just like, no, like that's just not. And like when you get older, like you start making those decisions on your own. But like we traveled for 19 weeks straight last year. Like there wasn't like every day was not perfect on that trip.
yes,
That's a
for
long
sure.
time. And all of us showed up at practice every single day. Like there was times where you're like 100% might be like 80, but like that's just what it is for that day. But it's always finding like your 100% isn't going to be the same every single day, depending on how tired you are, depending on like the conditions outside and stuff like that. So like always just pushing to your max of like what you have that day, and your coach is understanding that.
Yeah, 100%. So since we talk about traveling more and more, so let's switch into this conversation into this traveling mode, because you're on the road a lot, and the older you get, the more you're on the road. Like, you're less pretty much in your hometown than you are on the road. So what is it the most difficult for you when you're traveling? What are the biggest obstacles?
I'd say at the beginning was like missing your family and missing being like home and stuff like that. I've kind of gotten used to that now. That doesn't really affect because like I'm just used to being gone. I think last year 19 weeks was a little long. I definitely missed home after 19 weeks.
Yeah, for sure.
But then as soon as I got home after like 2 weeks, I was like, okay, are we
When
traveling?
is the next tournament?
Yeah. So like that part is hard, and just I think managing everything, because like at home you have you have this support from your family when you're traveling and stuff like that, but like no one there like in person, I guess. So I think like just time management with school, with like you're not always in the mood to like go and practice, but pushing through and going anyway and doing it, and traveling and time changes. Like there's a lot going on. I think us when we traveled as a group was a lot easier on me than when I traveled alone, because I've traveled alone a couple times, and it's a lot harder when you don't have your friends there and teammates like pushing you, and we push each other. When one of us is down, we pick each other up. Like, yes, of course we're competing against ourselves, but I don't think any of us would be where we are if we didn't have each other pushing each other. Um, and yeah, I think like that, like just managing everything, and the time change is really hard. Like we'll go to tournaments 3 days before it starts in a 6 hour time difference. And online it says that like an hour per day to get used to it. And we're already like halfway through the tournament. Yeah. But you're supposed to be like used to it. So like when we went to Australia, we went maybe 4 or 5 days ahead of time, and it was 16 hours. Like
yeah,
playing our first tournament. And like I think none of us really like use that as an excuse. Like I got to the finals of singles, Vicky and I won doubles, like we did well, but you're just like having to manage all those emotions and time change, and only getting 4 hours of sleep, and just dealing with it and just going on, like just pushing through. I think over time you just learn that when you travel, it's a lot of just like going through it, pushing through, just like dealing with what you have. And like sometimes it's not the best food, or it's not the best this or that. Like you just have to go through it. And like, I mean, one day if you get good enough, you'll be playing Grand Slams and you won't have any problems. Like a lot of like, I mean, even like J5s, like the food you get at J5s versus J1s. Like when we got to J1s, we're like, oh my gosh, this is so good. Like we're so happy. And you get to the Grand Slams and there's like a whole physio team. So it's like a lot of like, we joke about like, if we want better refs, then like get to the better level, or if you want get to the better level. So it's just like a lot of pushing through. But I think at the beginning it's hard. Like it's when you miss your family, you're like, oh, I just want to go home. But they're like, no, like stay. But like you want to go home. Or like there's time change. We're like, oh, we're tired. And now we're just like, okay, we're tired, but we're still going to practice. We're still gonna play. Like that's just how it is.
So you get used to it, you know, essentially what you're saying, if it becomes a habit, and that's
Yeah. I mean, now like traveling is like easy for me. It's like what I want to do. If I'm home for more than 2 weeks, I'm just like, I'm bored. Please
that's
get me
right.
out. Like COVID was like, I
No,
think that's when we became very grateful for
yeah.
how much Tennis Canada does for us and like our travel and stuff like that. Because like we like after 2 weeks, we're like, oh, we have 2 weeks off. We're missing nationals because the whole thing is like none of us like to play nationals. It's always like, oh, we have to play each other. Like we all know each other and stuff like that. So like we're like, oh, we get 2 weeks off. This is so nice. And then after those 2 weeks, we're like, I remember FaceTiming Vicky, and I'm like, what are we doing with our life? Like we have nothing. Like we're not traveling. We're not playing tournaments. We can't practice. And that was like a big like eye opener because like that's just always what I've done. You know, like since I remember, I've always been traveling, playing tennis, doing whatever I wanted. And then that was like stopped, and I was like, I should really be a lot more grateful for like how much we travel, how much we do.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you know, like as you travel more and more, and like this whole like adapt to the new situation thing, it also helps you on the court. Like once you understand, it's like hold on a second, you know, I'm here. I was able to, you know, figure things out. I lost my luggage, you know, but like it's the same thing like when you go on court and you're down 4-1 in the third set. It's like, hold on a second, I can figure this out. Let me think. Let me just think.
Yeah.
Let's not panic. Let me think. Okay, the girl, you know, what was working in the first, so and you kind of go through it, and it becomes like your little you know, like your little puzzle that you can solve. And then sometimes you solve and you feel like, wow, I feel like that feels great because you
Yeah.
go through so many challenges since, you know, like 11 years old when you started travel, like 12 years old. And then you know, when you're 12, like the challenges is like, oh my God, like where's my family, you know, or, you know, whatever, or it's like, they have weird French fries over here, you know, like some weird, like 12-year-old problems.
Yeah.
But as you mature, you know, like all of a sudden it's like jet lags, and it's like different conditions, and it's like super hot, and it's super windy, and it's whatever. And then you lose your luggage, and then it just kind of makes you just in the end tougher. And whoever adjusts faster, whoever adjusts with the right attitude, like what you were basically saying,
Yeah.
is getting, you know, the best out of this experience and getting to the next level. You know,
Yeah.
let's talk about what you enjoy the most about traveling.
I think the most enjoyable part is like meeting new people,
Hmm. Yeah.
understanding like their life and what they came from. Because like all we know is like what I came from, what my friends came on, like kind of the same thing, like more or less. There's obviously like a little bit difference in everything, but like we all came up through Tennis Canada and we travel all together. Everything's paid for, this and that. But learning from like different countries, the way of living there, trying new foods, even though at 12 I don't think I tried anything new. But like now I do. Um,
It's
but
funny because you know, like all the U12, U14 tours, like whenever we go to like some country, it's always like French fries and something, you know, like standard, something pizza, something pasta, something super safe. Because kids are like they just go to
yeah,
whatever they used to, right?
yeah. So it's like just learning like what other people went through to get to where we are. Like it's cool for me to see, especially at the Grand Slam level. Like when I was 9 saying I want to play a Grand Slam, like you're saying it and you're like trying to do it, but like actually getting there is like surreal. Like playing a junior grand slam is like crazy. And like seeing how everyone had a different path to get there is really cool to me. Like everyone played, some people played 8 hours a day, some people played 2 hours a day, but like we still got to the same place. So like sometimes like more hours on court doesn't equal like you're guaranteed to be better,
Yeah.
and like stuff like that, like just like seeing how everything else works around the world. And I think like you gain a lot of independence from traveling and like time management skills and just being able to figure things out yourself uh is like really cool. Like a lot of people will come up to like all of us at Tennis Canada and be like, oh, you're so mature for your age, but like I think a lot of that is like because of tennis, like because of
Oh,
what you do on
100%.
court, having to like
100%.
do like even just being like we're one of the only sports that like there's no on-court coaching most of the time. Like there's like you're just out there doing it yourself. Like you're figuring it out yourself, and like you have to go book practice courts yourself. And when you're 12, you're like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to
And
do
and
that.
and this is the only sport, Kayla, that the players are the referees. And
Yeah.
in junior tennis, for most of the like tournaments, like I'm not
Yeah.
talking like highest, but you're like
Yeah.
as you're coming up, that's insane. That's the like how is that even possible? Like players are
Yeah.
referees? What?
Yeah, like dealing with all that, like I think it really like shapes us in a way of like, I mean, like it's crazy seeing like some of the kids that I know like have not left the country. I'm just like, you've never left. Like I was like except for on family vacation, and they're like, you're traveling alone. I was like, yeah, I'm taking a flight to Europe by myself. Like that's just normal. But it's a lot of like independence, and like to me that's cool. Like I know I could live on my own and I'd be completely fine with it, like no problem at all. So I think like that's a really cool part about traveling, is like you learn to like be independent, but like you also have a team behind you, of course, but like just like doing things on your own at such a young age is like cool to me.
Yeah, for sure. It's really cool, and it's once you really understand it, once you like know how to use that independence,
Yeah.
like in a cool way, like that's what it's all
Yeah.
about, like. And yeah, no, for sure. So like I just want to switch things a little bit, and like if you can tell me maybe the last thing about traveling, if you can tell like your most fun story, like from your tours, like something that you remember that was like so hilarious or just
Uh,
funny, like it doesn't have to be like super
Funny. Let me think. It's probably something with you, honestly. Um, I'm trying to think. I mean, like the ones that always like pop up in my brain is like when we were in Bolivia,
Oh
and
my God, Bolivia
oh
tour.
yeah, Bolivia. We were always playing like what are the odds?
Yes,
And like that one day there was like that super rainstorm,
yes.
and we all like were playing what are the odds to go stand outside in the rain. Like
Yes.
why we did that? Like I don't know. Like why was that a thing? I have no idea. But like that's always like something that like reminds me of like the fun times about like traveling. Like we were doing like the most stupid things. Like
Yes.
literally the most stupid things we could come up with, we were doing. Like you had Stuart in Austria eat like beans or something, and
Oh
like
my God, I
like
never
that.
thought I never thought a kid would react so bad to eating a bean.
Now
Like
I
he was.
don't eat beans, Bogdan. You scarred me. I don't eat beans
Oh
because of that.
my God. Do you
But
remember
like
the
like
same,
stuff like
actually,
that.
the same, now that I remember, sorry to you'll finish, but when the same restaurant where he ate beans, I got zapped. Like I tried to like
What the
I was like, there is no way this fence is electrocuted.
cow?
And I
Why would you touch
and
the cow?
I touch it and it zaps me. And I was like, okay, I guess we found that out.
It literally there was no way it wasn't gonna be electric, and you just went up and touched it like it was
Oh,
nothing.
because it looked so like, like rustic. It looked so like
It looked flimsy for sure.
it
It
looked
did.
flimsy. It looked like okay, just like, to scare things, like,
Yeah.
whatever. It's like, come on, there's no way. Anyway, so you were saying, sorry, that was just
Yeah,
like that's
like I
something
think just like what are the odds? Like just like some of the things we do on trips, it's just like so stupid at the same time, but also like it's like an integral part of like that trip. Like what we did,
yes.
what are the odds? Like why would we do that when like we were in Belgium and we were like convincing the coaches like to like distract them, and then we'd go and get like one piece of candy. Like
It's the infamous tour where you guys were not allowed stuff like this. I
oh
remember.
yeah. Yeah. So like it's like when we're not allowed something, we're like, oh, we're gonna go do that. And now we look back and we're like, it could have like we could have made our lives like so much easier. Like we made it so hard for no reason. All for like one little tiny piece of candy. And like I'm sure the coaches would have let us have it. Like there was one time like Alan came knocking on the door to like grab our phones at night because like we weren't allowed to have phones when we were
That's
growing
right.
up. So like we were going to hand him our phones, and he's holding like a can of like Fanta, and we're like, "What's that in your hands?" And then he goes, "What's that under your bed?" And it was like a pack of Oreos.
Oh my
And we
God,
picked
you
them up
guys.
from home, and we're like, and this was on like day 2. Like we thought the Oreos were gonna last the whole trip. Obviously not.
Things
And we're
like
like,
this
I mean,
always come out like day one, day two. It's like right
yeah,
away, like
yeah.
it's
And we're like, oh, you can take it. It's empty, but like go ahead and have it. Like they're gone now. But it was just like funny stuff like that. Like it would always come up like on tours. Like there's always like something that reminds you of like every single tour, like some stupid like stuff we did. Like in Belgium, like we saw a random person just like walking beside us in like the like train station, and we all got our rackets because we were like scared. Like why at the train station? Obviously there's people walking around, but like 12-year-old self, like we're like, oh, and we're like shadow swinging, like we're acting all like tough, and we're like this short, and we're just like, why?
Yeah,
So I think
it's
like just like little things that like happen like that, but like Bolivia is like definitely like the one that I always remember, and like Austria, like with you, like
yeah,
it's always
Austria
like
was
what are the
hilarious.
odds, like
Oh my God.
for like the like it was like what are the odds to be first in line? What are the odds to like wash our hands first? What are the odds like for like some of the like the stupidest things?
Do you
Like
remember? Do you remember? I remember one of the stupidest things. Okay, I'll tell you. Remember how our car didn't turn on because like somebody left a light at the back seat, and we had to like call this company at 12 a.m. because we were leaving the other morning to another city.
yeah,
So
yeah.
somebody like who was it?
I don't know. I forget.
Oh yeah,
It,
I don't remember who it.
I don't
Okay,
know if
I
you
think it was
can like
Scarlett on the back seat. Sasha,
probably,
I don't remember.
but yeah,
But I remember the moment when we went grocery shopping when we were about to go, and I'm starting the car and it's like shh, and I'm like, oh, okay, and then
oh
I
no.
see the light like after I think after like I didn't see it obviously in the moment because it was
Mhm.
like there was no electricity, and then after we started the car I called the company, like some guy at 1 a.m. came over, some crazy stuff, and as soon as he fixes, like, oh, you guys had a light in the back seat. I was like, oh my guys, this the second I find out who that person is. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, and
that's
we always covered for each other. Like if it was like something
of course
like
you did.
we'd be like nothing. Like we'd be like, oh, like it was like Kayla or it was Ash.
Unless it
But
was
if it
Alex.
oh yeah, no, and then I'd call him out. I'd always call him out. We had like the biggest like rivalry like there
Yeah, I
was.
remember.
But like if there was anything big, like we were such a team. Like we'd always compete against each other and whatever. But like we'd be like, I don't know. I don't know. And we'd all like point at each other to like confuse the coach. It was like
Yeah, it's hilarious, because for like let's say like I'm gonna say regular kids, who are not in sports, they have summer camps, they have some other stuff that's for them, and this is like the highlight of the year. They go on a trip, they get to do all the fun stuff there. For you guys, this is your summer camp. The junior tours, this is like your time. Yes, we work really hard, and like we say like these fooling around and like these little fun things we get to do, they're it's not as much of that like compared to the training and the work. It's
yeah.
but that those things, that's usually what you guys remember out of the whole
Yeah.
tour,
Like
because
it's always like those little things
it's
like
always those, it's hilarious, no, for sure. So let's talk about what you're up to now. So you're in France right now. You mentioned it right before we started recording. um what is the plan for you like going forward? Like I know you signed with university recently.
yeah,
Congrats, by the way.
thank you.
So what is the plan for Kayla Cross going forward?
Yeah, so right now I'm on off season. No more tournaments for the rest of the year. Very long off season, but I think it'll be good. I had a lot of injuries this year, so just trying to get healthier in the gym and get stronger. So I'll be in France for another week and a half, and then Florida for training, December training. It'll be weird not playing Eddie Hearn Orange Bowl because I've been doing that since I was like 11.
That's right.
But we'll still be in Florida, so at least not home in the cold. Sorry about that. Like I know you're stuck in the cold, but I
Yes.
will not be for too long.
Yeah,
Um, and then I'll go home for Christmas. So I'm still in the junior phase because I know like pros don't get to spend Christmas at home, but I still get that.
that's
So I'm
it.
happy about that. And then for January, I'm still deciding if I'm going to go to Australia and play the Grand Slam,
Mhm.
or I might do like 25Ks in Florida. So just kind of depending, seeing the schedule. Obviously I want to go pro, so like I'm trying to work my like pro ranking, but at the same time it's a Grand Slam, so
Oh, for sure. And it's your last year, right? Like next year is your last
yeah.
year, like
So we'll
last
see
stab at it.
happens. It's hard. The travel to Australia is very hard because like if you go for like 3 weeks just to play like, the lead up tournament in Australian Open,
Mhm.
then when you come home like you're like completely done for a week. Like you can't play tournament. Like the time difference, like going there is like a little easier. Coming back is like very hard.
Mhm.
So it's like a long time for like just 2 tournaments. But we'll see. And then after that, I'm just trying to build my pro ranking in singles and doubles. Have a little bit higher doubles ranking right now,
Yes,
but
that's right.
build both rankings, and then deciding between going pro right away and university, depending on how I'm doing within next
Yeah,
year. If I get my
yeah, for
ranking
sure.
very high, or if I'm feeling very good, then I'll go right pro. If not, then I signed with Vanderbilt and I'll go there for a year, planned right now to go there
Mhm.
for a year and then leave, and then I can come back to
Okay,
finish your
that's a
exam.
good deal.
Yeah.
So, you know, right now you are on junior ranking, you're 18. So you're 18 in the world, which is pretty cool. Um, looking back, you know, like at the ranking and like the results and U12 and U14, like how much does that really mean right now? Because right now, this is where kind of like this is where it starts pretty
Mhm.
much, no? Like because
Yeah.
of obviously, like not to, you know, say no to all the great work
Yeah.
that you did before, but just for yourself, like looking back, you know, like at your U14 national title, or yeah, okay, or like, you know, like things that you did at provincials, or you know, like even some of the Tennis Europe events,
Yeah.
like can you tell a little bit like what does that mean to you right now?
Yeah, I mean, like, you always hear growing up that results don't matter and, like, all that, and not to focus on it and focus on your game and building and developing, and all the kids are like, "No, but, like, I need to win, I need to win, I need to win." And then at, like, a certain age, you're like, "Oh, wait, I, like, actually didn't need that." And I think it, like, goes in stages. It's like, when I was playing provincials, like, I needed to win provincials. Like, that was the goal, and, like, if I did that, then I'm, like, set. And then, like, you go and play nationals, and you're like, "Well,
I'm
provincials
sad.
didn't matter." Yeah,
Sad for
yeah,
what?
I don't know, Bogdan, like, that's just how it was. And then, like, you thought you were, like, on top of the world, like, winning, like, selections,
That's
and
right.
then, like, you get to nationals, you're like, "Well, like, provincials was nothing, like, I didn't need to win that." And
Mhm.
then you play, like, ITFs, and you're like, "Well, all the Ontario stuff didn't matter, all the national stuff didn't matter because that ranking doesn't even exist anymore." And, like, it's the same thing in juniors, like, now that I'm playing pro events, I'm like, well, like the junior ranking helps if you're top 100 to get into like 15Ks and stuff like that.
Yes.
So like you need to have like some base and you need to have some results, of course. But like the overall of like you have to win every single match you play and you have to win every single tournament and you have to be top 10 and you have to be this and that. Like it's not true. Like I've always been like decently high in the rankings, but I was like not number 1 in U12. I was not number 1 in U14. Like so like there's other people that come that weren't doing so well before, and like an example of like Keegan Rice, like he wasn't doing
That's
in
right.
the like anything before, and all of a sudden now he's like winning like a grade 1. So like
Yeah, he's top 100 right now in the world, like 80
yeah,
or
like
something.
it's not always like you don't always have to be number 1 like the whole time. And like tournaments when you're growing up, like a lot of it is like I was always pushed to like, play well and play your game and come to the net and do this. Like I was small. Like I was getting past the net left, right, and center, but I
Mhm.
kept doing it and like building that and like just like you have to have like some sort of results and you want to be competitive and you want to win, of course, but it's not everything. Like
Mhm.
if you're number 1 in U12, that's not guaranteeing you to go pro. If you're number 1 in juniors in the ITF ranking, that doesn't mean you're gonna go pro. Like there's people that were like 300 and now are pro. There's people that were number 1 and are pro. So like you can come from any like ranking or results and become a pro and very good at it. So like not everything in juniors matters. And I
Yeah.
think I've learned that within the last like 2 years.
Okay, and it's huge, and I knew you would say something along those lines. That's why I asked you this. Like, I think it's important for everybody to hear. Kayla, I have few questions from the internet. You know, like some people ask me, like because they knew I would have an interview with you.
Yep.
So if you don't mind me
Yep.
reading them. So question number one: how do I avoid? I'm assuming this is from a parent, obviously. How do I avoid putting pressure on my daughter when she plays tennis?
Um, I would say just like pushing them to a certain degree. Like
Mhm.
obviously my parents pushed me to play tennis and show up to practice some days when I didn't want to, but it's also like keeping it fun and like having like talking, like having them in tennis, but also like when they come home, like not everything be about tennis, and like when they don't do like great in a tournament, like not like punishing them for it or not being like, now you're not going to get this, now you're not going to get that, because then the kid's like, oh my god, I have to win next time, and then you start developing bad habits when you're playing. You start pushing, you start being tennis, like pushing your kid to do well and to train hard and stuff like that. But like when it comes to results, you don't want to be like, you need to get to this like stage, or like I know some parents will be like, oh, if you get to the finals, then I'll get you like this as a like gift. Like my parents never did that, because it was like, if I wanted to win, I'd do it for myself, and I wouldn't do it for like my parents. I wouldn't do it for that prize. Like if I wanted to win, I wanted to win for myself, not like, not everything has to be like something on the line. And like I think that also puts a lot of pressure, because you're like, oh, I want that toy or whatever it is, like I want that. And then you're like, oh no, like if I lose, like now my parents are gonna be mad now, like, and then you start like going back and like pushing and like stuff like that, which is like, you end up doing it anyway, of course, when you're like scared. But like
Love it.
when you don't have the pressure of your parents, like of course you're gonna have some pressure. Like you're like, they're gonna want to push you, they're gonna want you to do well, but like in the sense of like, that's what's best for my kid, not like to like, the kid's already gonna put pressure on themselves. You don't need to like add to it. So I think just like trying to keep like, especially after a bad loss, like trying to not like rub it in their face that they just lost to someone who's like worse than them. Like
And
just
right after the match, like,
yeah,
okay, give me that back. Okay, we're gonna go,
go in the
and
car,
it's
like let's go home.
yeah,
Yeah,
right away.
that's
Oh, that's the
not,
worst
yeah,
thing. Nah, that's the worst thing.
yeah,
For sure. I always feel bad for the kid, who just lost. He's still like crying, and the parent just grabs him in the car, and I'm like, in my mind, I was like, what are the conversation? What is the
like
conversation they're having right now? That's not gonna be good for
like the jokes is always like, you don't want to go in the car after you lost.
yes, that's right.
It's just like not, so like it's just like giving your kid like, we're not going to be perfect, we're not going to win every match we're supposed to win. Like I still lose matches that I'm like on paper not supposed to like lose in. So like
Yep.
things are going to happen. Like it's tennis, like it's one of the most unpredictable sports, like
Yeah. Things can happen,
so
right?
like yeah, like leave things alone, like push your kids to want to get better and stuff like that, and like push them to go to practice. Like some days like you're not going to want to go and your parents like, no, like go. But it's also like keeping it like not only about tennis. Like there's other things in life. Like tennis doesn't like define like who you are as a person. So like I think it's like a big thing.
Yeah, it's a great message, and just pretty much teaching them values as opposed to like reacting to their results. I think that's huge. Have you ever felt pressure from your parents?
Yeah.
Do you feel it now, like or not so
Not
much
anymore.
now?
No.
So okay, so then my question is, because that's what I thought. Like my next question is, like, what was the period where you felt it the most?
Probably when I was like 12.
Okay,
Because it was also like I was following Ashton, and Ashton was doing really well.
that's
And
right.
then I was doing like, I was like, I'd say like top 5. Like I wasn't like the number 1. Like I'd be like top 5, probably, like whatever. And like he was doing so well, and then like I was the kid that had the best wins and the worst losses. Like and still kind of to this day, that's like there's no like just like pretty like smooth.
It's coming.
Like
It's coming.
yeah. So like I think like that's when I felt it the most. Like not like sometimes it's also like the kid putting it like thinking that the parents putting it on them. Like to
Okay,
that.
so it's more the player, like, because like, oh my
Yeah.
God, what if I don't? And it's like,
Yeah, it's like, oh, Ashton was doing this, so now I have to do this. And then it was like, I remember like, I think at the age of 11, I told my mom she couldn't watch me anymore because she'd sit on the side and go like this. But that's just like a normal reaction. Like when I'm watching one of my friends play, like let's say it's like Vicky, and I see her miss a shot, I'm like, Vicky, like that's not the shot to miss. Like what are you doing? But like on the court, you think they're just like getting angry at you, but it's just like a natural reaction to like,
yeah, that's right.
Like if I miss a short ball, I'm like,
But
like
on the court, like on the court, if you watch somebody do that, you think like, oh my God, it's like you just go, you forget about the game plan, you forget about,
so everything goes out the door.
Is your opponent like righty or lefty? You're like just thinking about that and you just like overthink, and it's like,
so like I think like then I was like, Mom, you're not allowed to watch me anymore. Like, I can't have that on the side. Like, no. But like, then like when I started watching, when I grew up and I was like, oh wait, like now I'm sitting there, I'm like, Kayla, don't say anything. Don't react. Like,
Poker
no.
face.
So like I understand it now, but like as a kid, you see your parent go like this and you're like, oh my God, I can't miss again. Like I need no.
Sure,
So
sure.
I think like that, but like it wasn't like she was putting pressure on me, but it was just like my like reaction to it was
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I need to be perfect. And so like there's also like that perception. Like a lot of times it is like the parent, but also a lot of times it's like what the kid like thinks is
that's
gonna
right.
happen if you like don't win.
Yeah, that's cool. So any advices maybe for like, I don't know, young players like maybe that are watching like U14, U12?
Yeah, I'd say just to like you're playing for yourself, like you're in tennis, like it's an individual sport most of the time, like except for like when you're playing like team competitions, but most of the time it's individual sport. So like do it for yourself. Like your your results at 10 to 12 to 14 don't matter. Like they start like it starts to matter when you're like a pro. Like because that's the only step there is. Like it's just like you're a pro. Like there's nothing else to it. But like when you're a junior, there's still so much more to play. Like there's been like times where I've done really well, but there's also been times where I've done really bad. And like that's gonna happen in tennis. You're not gonna be like always on like a straight uphill. Like even people that are ranked number one throughout their whole life, there's still times where you're like not doing well.
Yeah,
So just like trying to focus on yourself. Like your parents are there to support you. They're always gonna support you. They're your parents, so they're gonna support you. Your
that's
coaches
right.
are your coaches. Like they're gonna support you. They're gonna be behind you. Like they're gonna push you, of course. And like in those moments, sometimes you're like, oh, they're just being mean, but like they're just trying to help you and be there for you and stuff like that. But you also need to be pushed. Like you can't expect like your parent or coach to just like be so laid back because then you need like a level of being pushed to get to the next level.
Mhm.
Um, so just like trying to do it for yourself, like and not worrying about other people's
Yeah,
opinions as
yeah,
much.
that's a great advice. So you mentioned like, you know, like you're 17, you're transitioning, you know, you're in your last year, next year you're in the last year of your junior you know, career, so to speak, and you're transitioning, you're playing pro events. Like, what is the hardest thing? And that's not the question, by the way, from anybody. I just like that's something I
Yeah.
just thought about asking right now. So what is the hardest thing for you, you know, like about this transition, or what's the most difficult thing about transitioning or playing like junior event compared to pro event?
I think a big change is like you would assume the level is a lot stronger in like the lower level pros than it is in like the high juniors because you're like, oh, it's a pro tournament. Like I'm scared. Like it's not always about the level, but I think the level of maturity is a big thing.
Mm.
Like the players don't go in as much roller coasters, like emotional. Like they kind of like if they lose a point, they're like, okay, I got the next one. Where juniors like, well, there goes like the whole game. Like,
There we go again.
no, I mean I'm a victim of that. Like obviously everyone as a kid is like, oh, there it is. Like I'm done. Like next set, like it's over. Um, so like I think like that in pros is like a big thing. Like they don't do that as much. Like they're more like, okay, well, like, you know, the next one. And also what you see in like the lower level pro tournaments is like how much the girls want it. Because like what like you're not making that much at like those stages. And like some of them like don't have the support of a federation behind them. Like that's their paycheck for the week. So like they want it so much. Where juniors, I feel like not as much. So like they will stay in rallies. Like maybe their level isn't as good, but they will like hit 10 balls in a row and just grind and like get the balls back and like, you know, like play and like every single point. There's not one point where they disappear.
Mhm.
And I think like that's like the biggest change. It's like hitting wise, like if I were to rally down the middle, I could hang with like most of the players. But like it's like when it comes to like competing and like which I'm learning now is like you need to be there every single point. You
Mhm.
need to want it so like so much. Like because the person on the other side of the court is like that's what they're living for the week. Like they want it like so badly. So like you also need to like show that and like be there every single point. Like it's not the level as much as like it's not like your technique. It's not like if you can hit the ball hard. Like it's more of like how bad you're willing to get that ball in the court deep and like again and again and again, like for 3 hours. I think like
Oh,
that's the biggest change I've
yeah,
like really.
that's really cool insight. That's pretty cool. Okay, so the last question is can you get to a pro level training in Canada? Because a lot of players like you know they're moving to Florida, they're moving to Europe, they're just like going somewhere. So what is your opinion? Because you were in Canada pretty much the whole time. You know, obviously we know Bianca was like within the federation for her whole life. So what is your take on that?
I think you can. I think like kind of what going back to what I said before is like everyone has a different path. Like not everyone needs like in Europe, like the whole thing is like they train a lot of hours. They'll
Mhm.
train minimum 5-6 hours of day of like tennis. Like where me growing up, like when I was in London, I was playing like 2 hours a day, but I like loved to be on court. Like I loved my 2 hours. Like I put in the work, and like there's some players like when you're in tennis Canada, it's like a little bit more of a set schedule, so it's like a little different. But there's some girls that still go to regular school, so they train in the morning and they train at night, and some people just train after school. And like you can get like if you put your mind to it, you can get like anywhere. Like you don't have to go to Europe and train 100 hours. You don't have to go to Florida and only train in the heat. Like you can become pro from anywhere. Like Bianca was in the federation the whole time. Like of course they take us to Florida sometimes to train, or they like,
That's right.
travel to Europe and stuff like that. But like I don't need to like have like a whole base in
That's
like
right.
Europe or Florida to like train. Like Vicky went to IMG and then she came back and now she's like back with like the federation and training with us. Like there's people that do like a mix of everything. There's people that are just in Canada, people that are just in Europe. Like anything's possible from anywhere if you like want to make it work. Like
Yeah.
if you don't want to make it work, then it's not going to work whether you're in Europe or
That's
Florida
true.
or
That's
here.
very true.
Like so like I think just like if you put your mind to it and you have like you'll find the resources if you like want it that badly.
Yeah.
Like cuz like some people will be like, "Oh, I don't have the resources to do it." Like if you want it that badly, like you'll find a way to do it. Your coaches will help out, your family will help out, like whatever it is, like but you can do it from Canada for sure. I think I've done Vicky and I have done a pretty good job of that. Of
Yeah.
always being in Canada.
Still
But
are.
we had friends that like have been in Florida like and have done it well. So it's like you can make anything work from anywhere um if you wanted to.
Yeah, 100%. And it goes back to your open mind, about things that you can learn from everybody.
Yeah.
There's that.
Yeah.
So Kayla, any last message that you want to leave maybe the next generation with, like anything you want to say before we wrap up to the young player that are watching this?
I think just continue having fun and working hard. Those are the two most important things that will get you anywhere in life, whether that's in tennis, whether that's in school, like in your career, like working hard and enjoying what you're doing is very important and keeps you going in hard times when you don't always want to like, when it's like when you're being pushed, but you're enjoying it at the same time, like it's a lot easier to get through it.
Yeah, that's a great message to finish this interview. Kayla, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming to the show, and just there was a lot of fun talking to you. Brings a lot of memories back, and good luck in your future events.
Thank you.
Yeah, see you.